Lavender, the AI machine directing Israel's bombing spree in Gaza. Now, remember, 972 magazine also conducted investigations in the past couple months back about the Gospel, which is another AI targeting initiative. The Israeli army has marked tens of thousands of Gazans as suspects for assassination using an AI targeting system with little human oversight and a permissive policy for casualties, 972 and local call revealed. In a 2021 book titled The Human Machine Team, How to Create Synergy Between Human and Artificial Intelligence That Will Revolutionize Our World, was released in English under the pen name Brigadier General Y.S. In it, the author, a man who we confirmed to be the current commander of the elite Israeli intelligence unit 8200, makes the case for designing a special machine that could rapidly process massive amounts of data to generate thousands of potential targets for military strikes in the heat of war. Such technology, he writes, would resolve what he described as a human bottleneck for both locating new targets and decision-making to approve the targets. I just need you to understand, this is Nazi shit. If AI existed during the Holocaust, they would use it. Because guess what? No matter what, when you stab someone, that's a painful decision that the violent person is engaging in. There is a moment where you might stop yourself from stabbing someone. So what's more efficient? Shooting them with a gun. But when you're shooting someone with a gun, you still get to see the white in their eyes, even from afar. So what's more efficient? Drone striking them. So when you engage in drone striking, you're at least in a facility miles away, sometimes thousands of miles away with a joystick. But even then, you still can get PTSD. So what is the most efficient way to mechanize death? What is the most efficient way to mechanize death? Make a non-human entity control the process. Because the reality is, it's pesky. Humans are malleable. They sometimes have feelings. They sometimes have emotions. They feel bad about their decisions, no matter how bloodthirsty or violent they may be. When you automate the process, however, you remove the human bottleneck. That human bottleneck being that, 1 out of every 10 drone strikes, you might have a guy who has some setbacks. They might not want to engage in murder maxing, So we got to get that shit out of there. Just mechanize it. Okay? And that's precisely what's happening here. The goal is to kill as many Palestinians as possible. But sometimes human feelings get in the way. Okay? You don't want a guy that is operating a concentration camp to start feeling some type of way about operating the concentration camp and, I don't know, try to save some Jews, right, during the Holocaust. You don't want that happening because then you can't do the final solution. This is the best way to engage in industrialized killing like the Nazis did, a more efficient way. This is a big part of what they try to, rewrite when you're in the military, to get that thought out of your brain, to turn you into a unit. Okay? Why is Marat calling me? Such a machine, it turns out, actually exists. A new investigation by 972 magazine, a local call, reveals that the Israeli army has developed artificial intelligence-based program known as Lavender, unveiled here for the first time. According to 6 Israeli intelligence officers who have all served in the army during the current war on the Gaza Strip and had first-hand involvement with the use of AI to generate targets for assassination, Lavender has played a central role in the unprecedented bombing of Palestinians, especially during the early stages of the war. In fact, according to the sources, its influence on military's operations was such that they essentially treated the outputs of the AI machine as if it were a human decision. Formally, the Lavender system is designed to mark all suspected operatives in the military wings of Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, including low-ranking ones, as potential bombing targets. In the first weeks of the war, the army almost completely relied on Lavender, which clocked as many as 37,000 Palestinians as suspected militants and their homes for possible airstrikes. During the early stages of the war, the army gave sweeping approval for officers to adopt Lavender's kill list with no requirement to thoroughly check why the machine made those choices or to examine the raw intelligence data on which they were based. One source stated that human personnel often served only as a rubber stamp for the machine's decisions, adding that normally they would personally devote about only 20 seconds to each target before authorizing a bombing, just to make sure the Lavender marked target is male. Not to make sure that the Lavender marked target is actually someone who is a suspected militant or engaging in war or doing anything really, just that it's a male. Of course, you know, they also, as we know from the previous 972 magazine, utilizing the gospel, were removing restrictions that they previously supposedly had as far as like high priority targets being militants that they suspect of being militants in the homes, in the houses alongside their family members. So just, you know, something to consider. This was despite knowing that the system makes what are regarded as errors in approximately 10% of cases. That's the known quantity of error, and is known to occasionally mark individuals who have merely a loose connection to militant groups or no connection at all. Moreover, the Israeli army systematically attacked the targeted individuals while they were in their homes, usually at night, while their whole families were present, rather than during the course of military activity. According to the sources, this was because, from what they regarded as intelligence standpoint, it was easier to locate the individuals in their private houses. Additional automated systems, including one called Where is Daddy, also revealed here for the first time, were used to specifically track the targeted individuals and carry out bombings when they had entered their families' residences. Where's Daddy? The result, as the sources testified, is that thousands of Palestinians, most of them women and children, or people who are not involved in the fighting, were wiped out by Israeli airstrikes, especially during the first weeks of the war because the AI program's decisions. We were not interested in killing Hamas operatives only when they were in a military building or engaged in a military activity, an intelligence officer told 972. On the contrary, the IDF bombed them in homes without hesitation as a first option. It's much easier to bomb a family's home. The system is built to look for them in these situations. The Lavender machine joins another AI system, the Gospel, about which information was revealed in a previous investigation, as I talked about before. A fundamental difference between the two systems is the definition of the target. Whereas the Gospel marks buildings and structures that the army claims militants operate from, Lavender marks people and puts them on a kill list. So they have a target prioritization AI system that's also faulty, obviously, with basically no human intervention. And they have a kill list that is also being operated by AI. In addition, according to the sources, when it came to targeting alleged junior militants marked by Lavender, the army preferred to use only unguided missiles, commonly known as dumb bombs, in contrast to the smart precision bombs, which can destroy entire buildings on top of their occupants and cause significant casualties. You don't want to waste expensive bombs on unimportant people. It's very expensive for the country, and there's a shortage of those bombs, said C, one of the intelligence officers. Another source said that they had personally authorized the bombing of hundreds of private homes of alleged junior operatives marked by Lavender, with many of these attacks killing civilians and entire families as collateral damage. Remember, when they say Hamas hides among the civilian population, this is what they mean. Okay? It's people that they suspect Hamas, suspect of being Hamas or being militants of Islamic Jihad that are just living their everyday fucking lives in their homes with their family members that they know are not Hamas. They are deliberately targeting them at their homes, as they are openly describing here. The human bottleneck I think they're referring to here is that an officer cannot review 10 targets every 60 seconds, as it slows down the killing process as targets. So they let a robot do it, and they can tick boxes, say yes, and tell a drone to destroy a target at a much faster pace. It's about the efficiency of the killing of Palestinians as suspected targets more than the emotional element. Yeah, no, I understand. I get that. I think humans are also pesky, though. They are emotional, which is why I started the conversation off of like talking about drone striking rather than like directly shooting them or directly bombing them, you know, with a rocket launcher or something. In an unprecedented move, according to two of the sources, the army also decided during the first weeks of the war that for every junior Hamas operative that Lavender marked, it was permissible to kill up to 15 or 20 civilians. In the past, the military did not authorize any collateral damage during assassinations of low-ranking militants. The sources added that in the event that the target was a senior Hamas official with the rank of a battalion or brigade commander, the army on several occasions authorized the killing of more than 100 civilians in the assassination of a single commander. Sometimes there was no commander to be found, by the way, but they still were authorizing what they suspected was a military commander. The situation that comes to mind is the consistent bombing of the Jabalia camp that basically pummeled an entire refugee camp into rubble. The following investigation is organized according to the 6 chronological stages of the Israeli army's highly automated target production in the early weeks of the Gaza war. First, we explain the Lavender machine itself, which marked tens of thousands of Palestinians using AI. Second, we reveal the Where's Daddy system, which tracked these targets and signaled to the army when they entered their family homes. Third, we describe how dumb bombs were chosen to strike these homes. Fourth, we explain how the army loosened the permitted number of civilians who could be killed during the bombing of a target. Fifth, we note how automated software inaccurately calculated the amount of non-combatants in each household. And sixth, we show how on several occasions when a home was struck, usually at night, the individual target was sometimes not inside at all, because military officers did not verify the information in real time. Step 1. Once you go automatic, target generation goes crazy. Hold on, I'm also ordering my food because I'm hungry. Because it's officially 3 p.m., time for the top of the hour ad break, and time for me to order my daily food. Apologies. Okay. It's not too early. It's 2:54. It's fine. Anyway. Yeah, for the record, and this is a good point to bring up. Lavender listed as many as 37,000 Palestinian men who had been linked by the AI system to Hamas or PIJ. So let's say 15 to 20 casualties are permissible for every junior ranking member, and let's say all 37,000 are junior members, which isn't the case. That is 720,000 Palestinians that are permissible to kill. For high ranking, they go up to 100 civilians. So even if all 37,000 were ranked as low ranking, that would still mean 720,000 in the kill zone. Which, of course, bro, that doesn't explain deliberately targeting journalists, academics like Refat Al-Arir, or medical personnel unless they're going for the backbone of the society. The target is not Hamas only. No, you're forgetting. They talked about that in a previous. They talked about that in the previous article. They deliberately target civilian infrastructure under both the Dahiya doctrine and also under their AI targeting systems as well. They go after civilian targets deliberately to destroy the moral fabric or destroy the fabric of Palestinian society. Yeah. They call them power targets when they go after civilian infrastructure deliberately, like schools, mosques, universities, hospitals. This is one aspect of the machine of death in Israel. Okay? Just one aspect. I'm sure that they are still doing deliberate assassinations. I mean, they are doing deliberate assassinations. The excerpt from Understanding Willing Participants about the SS reads just like this article. The Nazis' pursuit for a humane method of killing from Understanding Willing Participants and its details about the 4 methods Nazis preferred in killing civilians. This was the Nazi extermination camp ideology to prevent SS officers from having trauma from their murders. First, victims should remain totally unaware that they are about to die. Second, perpetrators need not touch, see, or hear their victims as they die. Third, the death blow should avoid leaving any visual indications of harm on the victims' bodies. And finally, the death blow should be instantaneous. At the start of the Holocaust, the Nazis did not have a cheap and efficient method of killing civilians that came remotely close to meeting all 4 of these conditions. Over time, however, and with much competitive trial and error experimentation, certain innovators in places like Auschwitz inched their way ever closer to this ideal. Most Nazis strongly preferred that their many civilian victims not experience the stress of knowing they were about to die. To secure such a condition, the Nazis relied most often on elaborate props of deception. These included, for example, promises of water, food, and work after taking a quick shower, fake railway stations, pleasantly painted gas chambers with flowers, and a carefully placed Star of David, all to trick victims into thinking they had not arrived at a place of death. So why was it so important to the perpetrators that their victims not anticipate their own deaths? One explanation is that such props encouraged victim docility, which helped to secure a smooth and efficient flow of victims through the killing process. There is certainly much truth to this explanation. However, a closer look reveals other, more subtle, but equally important motives. This is why a fundamental plank of Israeli ideology and myth-making that is almost antagonistic to the victims and survivors of the Holocaust, and this is a very real phenomenon that I've talked about in the past, if you remember, is just built on this false notion that people knew that they were, that Jews knew that they were going to death camps, and they just kind of took it. And Israel will never take it again. Jews will never take it again. It's false. It's a false premise. Many of the Jews did not know that they were walking into a death camp. It's bullshit. It's also, serialized victim blaming in one of the grossest ways possible. And in spite of that, there was still plenty of resistance, both before the Nazis rise to power and certainly even after, like the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. So that's something to also consider. Consider the top of the hour ad break, which I forgot to run. Anyway. In the Israeli army, the term human target referred in the past to a senior military operative who, according to the rules of the military's international law department, can be killed in their private home even if there are civilians around. Intelligence sources told 972 and Local Call that during Israel's previous wars, since this was an especially brutal way to kill someone, often by killing an entire family alongside the target, such human targets were marked very carefully and only senior military commanders were bombed in their homes to maintain the principle of proportionality under international law. Still ridiculous. But after October 7, when Hamas-led militants launched a deadly attack on southern Israeli communities, killing around 1,200, abducting 240, the army, the sources said, took a dramatically different approach. Under Operation Iron Swords, the army decided to designate all operatives of Hamas' military wing as human targets, regardless of their rank or military importance. And that changed everything. The new policy also posed a technical problem for Israeli intelligence. In previous wars, in order to authorize the assassination of a single human target, an officer had to go through a complex and lengthy incrimination process, cross-check evidence that the person was indeed a senior member of Hamas's military wing, find out where he lived, his contact information, and finally know when he was home in real time. When the list of targets numbered only a few dozen senior operatives, intelligence personnel could individually handle the work involved in incriminating and locating them. However, once the list was expanded to include tens of thousands of lower-ranking operatives, the Israeli army figured it had to rely on automated software because they had to kill everybody. Get it? And it's much more efficient. If you have a machine of death, it's much more efficient to leave it up to the AI to process all this shit. Fundamentally, saying a guy is a fucking Hamas officer so they can be killed alongside their family in their home is already insane. Inside of your concentration camp, inside of your death camp that you've created for them. That's ridiculous. I always wondered if they had a fucked up machine to do this. Lavender explains why, if you closely follow Palestinian media every night, you hear that, for example, 5 houses have been hit in Rafah. And in each house, around 8 people are killed, and 5 or 7 of them are women and children. They do all of this to kill a single low-ranking member in most instances. Lavender is a war crime machine. I just want to tell you how appreciative I am of your education on this conflict. I had only cursory knowledge of Israel and Gaza before October 7. You have been patient and understanding about many of us lacking knowledge on this matter, especially when you have clearly been covering this much longer and didn't treat our lack of knowledge with disdain and only wanted to educate us. I try my best. There are definitely moments where I lose my mind and yell at people, especially when they're so relentless and so unyielding. Is this article not just reinforcing Zionist propaganda that they're actually targeting militants when it's clear they're just targeting every single residential structure? No, there is another article that directly talks about how they are targeting residential structures. What are you talking about? This is a specific targeting system that they found in their investigation. A targeting system that literally fucking kills civilians. It shows everyone that reads this article and has some kind of conscience that it's just no holds barred. It is a machine of murder. The result, the sources testify, was that the role of human personnel in incriminating Palestinians and military operatives was pushed aside. The AI did most of the work instead. We didn't know who the junior operatives were because Israel didn't track them routinely before the war, illuminating the reason behind the development of this particular target machine for the current war. They wanted us to allow us to attack the junior operatives automatically. That's the holy grail. Once you go automatic, target generation goes crazy. The sources said that the approval to automatically adopt Lavender's kill list, which had previously been used only as an auxiliary tool, was granted about 2 weeks into the war after intelligence personnel manually checked the accuracy of a random sample of several hundred targets selected by the AI system. When that sample found out that Lavender's results has reached 90% accuracy in identifying an individual's affiliation with Hamas, the army authorized the sweeping use of the system. From that moment, sources said that if Lavender decided an individual was a militant in Hamas, they were eventually asked to treat that as an order, with no requirement to independently check why the machine made that choice or to examine the raw intelligence data on which it is based. At 5 a.m., the Air Force would come and bomb all the houses that we had marked. We took out thousands of people. We didn't go through them one by one. We put everything into automated systems, and as soon as one of the marked individuals was at home, he immediately became a target. We bombed him and his house. It was very surprising for me that we were asked to bomb a house to kill a ground soldier whose importance in the fighting was so low, said one source about the use of AI to mark alleged low-ranking militants. I nicknamed those targets garbage targets. Still, I found them more ethical than the targets that we bombed just for deterrence. High rises that are evacuated and toppled just to cause destruction. Remember? In the other article? The deadly results of this loosening of restrictions in the early stage of the war were staggering. According to data from the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza, on which the Israeli army has relied almost exclusively since the beginning of the war, Israel killed some 15,000 Palestinians, almost half of the death toll so far in the first 6 weeks of the war, up until a week-long ceasefire was agreed on November 24th. The more information and variety, the better. The Lavender software analyzes information collected on most of the 2.3 million residents of the Gaza Strip through a system of mass surveillance, then assesses and ranks the likelihood that each person is active in the military wing of Hamas or PIJ. According to sources, the machine gives almost every single person in Gaza a rating from 1 to 100, expressing how likely it is that they are a militant. Lavender learns to identify characteristics of known Hamas and PIJ operatives whose information was fed to the machine as training data, and then to locate these same characteristics, also called features. By the way, let me just say something. Depending on what level of Zionism you're on, okay, this is perfectly valid. Like, there are people who will read this article and go, yeah, this is perfectly valid. See, we're just killing militants. We're trying to kill militants. This was created as a way to, one, obviously make the mechanized death easier. Okay, just like UAV drone snipers make it much easier to kill people. Okay, this also is something that you can point the finger of blame at the end of the day. It gives you plausible deniability. Well, we didn't make the targets, the AI did. You're shifting the responsibility of genocide to a machine. Okay? So that's something to also consider here. Obviously, the underlying allowance for this machine to even operate basically comes from the genuine interest in conducting an ethnic cleansing and ethnic displacement operation. Okay? You can't allow this for any real national security concern if you think that the people that if you think the people that you're attacking are actually human beings. Okay? Among the general population, the sources explain an individual found to have several different incriminating features will reach a high rating and thus automatically becomes a potential target for assassination. In the human machine team, the book referenced the beginning of this article, the current commander advocates for such a system without referencing Lavender by name. The commander himself also isn't named, but 5 sources in the AD 200 confirmed that the commander is the author, also reported by Haaretz. Describing human personnel as a bottleneck that limits the Army's capacity during a military operation, the commander laments, "We humans cannot process so much information. Doesn't matter how many people you have tasked to produce targets during the war, you still cannot produce enough targets per day." The solution to this problem, he says, is artificial intelligence. The book offers a short guide to building a target machine, similar in description to Lavender, based on AI and machine learning algorithms. Including in this guide are several examples of the hundreds of thousands of features that can increase an individual's rating, such as being in a WhatsApp group with a known militant, changing cell phones every few months, and changing addresses frequently. I'm going to pause on that for a moment. I need you to really understand. So, like, the targets that they populated with intelligence for the assessment made by the AI was already faulty. It does not withstand scrutiny from a human being. The criteria itself is already faulty. The more information and the more variety, the better, the commander writes. Visual information, cellular information, social media connections, battlefield information, phone contacts, photos. While humans select these features at first, the commander continues over time, the machine will come to identify features on its own. So even when the humans were collecting this information, it was already faulty. And when the machine is learning from faulty human, like the arbitrary collection of information that declares you to be a suspected Palestinian militant, all of a sudden you understand that it's all morally bankrupt. Okay? This, he says, can enable militaries to create tens of thousands of targets while the actual human decision as to whether or not attack them will remain a human one. I want to point to something really scary about this beyond just like the mechanization of death here. You can't use this technology in an active war zone. Many people in the chat are bringing up that, oh, well, they'll sell this later down the line to other governments, right? That's true. You can't use this information, however, in an active war zone. No, not for now, not ever. You can use this information on a domestic population. The only way that you can gather this level of intel is on a domestic population, a population that you seek to cull, a population that you have already engaged in mass surveillance on. This will not be used, like Russia can't use this in Ukraine. Why? Because they don't have 24/7 surveillance over the entirety of the Ukrainian population. Russia can, however, use this on their own population. Now, of course, that doesn't mean they're going to start drone striking their own population. American cops can use this to do active round-the-clock surveillance and data gathering to declare who is a high priority and likely to do crime, for example. Remember, Israel has the civil registry and the addresses of every single Palestinian living in Gaza, on top of the 24/7, round-the-clock drone surveillance that they engage in. The real scary thing here for the future, beyond the horrors that are right in front of our eyes, that this is being used on Gaza, is that this will be used on civilian populations by authoritarian governments that seek to destroy them, that seek to arrest them falsely, that seek to kill them even. The mass surveillance apparatus already exists in the United States of America and everywhere around the world. This is just simply being tested on Gaza. But you will never be able to test this. You will never be able to use this, no matter how hard you want to, on anything but a colony or anything but your own domestic population. Just remember that. Just like the skunk weapons that Israel used on their own civilly disobedient protesters a couple years prior, originally were used in the West Bank and still used in the West Bank to this day. They used the weapons on their enemies, just like America originally tested LRADs, long-range acoustic devices, that are now pretty much in every fucking cop car in Iraq. The United States of America first used LRADs in Iraq to curb civil disobedience. Now they use it in Portland. Whatever our governments are using on those we have declared our enemies, we will inevitably use on ourselves. Okay? Yeah. The French dude's boomerang. Yeah. It's correct. The book isn't the only time a senior Israeli commander hinted at the existence of a human target machine like Lavender. Colonel Yoav at Tel Aviv University's AI Week in 2023, which was reported on at the time in the Israeli media. In the lecture, the commander speaks about new sophisticated target machines used by the Israeli army that detects dangerous people based on their likeness to existing lists of known militants on which it was trained. Using the system, we managed to identify Hamas missile squad commanders, Colonel Yoav said in the lecture, referring to Israel's May 2021 military operation in Gaza, when the machine was used for the first time. You build features. How does it work? The lecture presentation slides, also obtained by 972, contain illustrations of how the machine works. It is fed data about existing Hamas operatives. It learns to notice similar features, and then it rates other Palestinians based on how similar they are to the militants. We rank the results and determine the threshold at which to attack a target, Colonel Yoav said in the lecture, emphasizing that eventually people of flesh and blood take the decisions. In the defense realm, ethically speaking, we put a lot of emphasis on this. These tools are meant to help intelligence officers break their barriers. There was no zero error policy. Everything was statistical. Everything was neat. It was very dry. He noted that his lack of supervision was permitted despite internal checks showing that Lavender's calculations were considered accurate only 90% of the time. In other words, it was known in advance that 10% of the human targets slated for assassination were not members of the Hamas military wing at all. Now remember, the 90%, in order to be a part of the 90%, the arbitrary information collection implies that, like, you can change your cell phone too many times. Okay? So, like, even the 90 fucking percent is ridiculous. For example, sources explain that the Lavender machine sometimes mistakenly flagged individuals who had communication patterns similar to known Hamas or PIJ operatives, including police and civil defense workers, militants' relatives, residents who happen to have a name and nickname identical to that of an operative, and Gazans who use a device that once belonged to a Hamas operative. How close does a person have to be Hamas to be considered by an AI machine to be affiliated with the organization, said one source critical of Lavender's inaccuracy. It's a vague boundary. Is a person who doesn't receive a salary from Hamas but helps them with all sorts of things a Hamas operative? Is someone who was in Hamas in the past but is no longer there today a Hamas operative? Each of these features, characteristics that a machine would flag as suspicious, is inaccurate. Similar problems exist with the ability to target machines to assess the phones used by an individual marked for assassination. In war, Palestinians change phones all the time, said the source. People lose contact with their families, give their phone to a friend or a wife, maybe lose it. There's no way to 100% rely on the automatic mechanism that determines which phone number belongs to whom. According to the sources, the Army knew that the minimal human supervision in place would not discover these faults. There was no zero error policy. Mistakes were treated statistically, said a source who used Lavender. Because of the scope and magnitude, the protocol was that even if you don't know for sure that the machine is right, you know that statistically it's fine, so you go for it. It has proven itself, said B, the senior source. There's something about the statistical approach that sets you to a certain norm and standard. There's been an illogical amount of bombings in this operation. This is unparalleled in my memory. And I have a much more trust in statistical mechanism than a soldier who lost a friend 2 days ago. Everyone there, including me, lost people on October 7. The machine did it coldly, and that made it easier. Another intelligence source who defended the reliance on the Lavender-generated kill list of Palestinian suspects argued that it was worth investing an intelligence officer's time only to verify the information if the target was a senior commander in Hamas. But when it comes to a junior militant, you don't want to invest manpower and time in it. Yeah, only when it's a military commander, because you want to know that you actually killed a military commander. Like, it goes to show you that the guy defending the machine process is saying, who gives a fuck if, like, random low-level people and their family members die? Or if random people that we suspect of being Hamas dies. Who cares? Nobody cares. I certainly don't care. That's what he's saying. He wants to know how accurate it is just for the commanders, just so he knows that he gets a confirmed kill from a commander. In war, there is no time to incriminate every target, so you're willing to take the margin of error of using artificial intelligence, risking collateral damage and civilians dying. Yeah, big risk they're taking there. And risking attacking by mistake and to live with it. B said that the reason for this automation was a constant push to generate more targets for assassination. In a day without targets, whose feature rating was sufficient to authorize a strike, we attacked at a lower threshold. We were constantly being pressured. Bring us more targets. They really shouted at us. We finished killing our targets very quickly. He explained that when lowering the rating threshold of Lavender, it would mark more people as targets for strikes. At its peak, the system managed to generate 37,000 people as potential human targets. But the numbers change all the time because it depends on where you set the bar of what a Hamas operative is. There were times when a Hamas operative was defined more broadly. And then the machine started bringing us all kinds of civil defense personnel, police officers, on whom it would be a shame to waste bombs. They help the Hamas government, but they don't really endanger soldiers. A shame to waste bombs. The most sympathetic Israeli occupying force intelligence officer, by the way, from the most moral army. Ashamed to waste bombs. Not like this is vile and disgusting that we're killing people that are tasked with civil governance, but it's actually a waste of bullets. That is Nazi shit, by the way. That literally is Nazi shit. I hope you understand that. One source who worked with a military data science team that trained Lavender said that data collected from employees of the Hamas-run internal security ministry, whom he does not consider to be militants, was also fed into the machine. I was bolstered by the fact that when Lavender was trained, they used the term Hamas operative loosely and included people who were civil defense workers in the training data set, he said. The source added that even if one believes these people deserve to be killed, training the system based on their communication profiles made Lavender more likely to select civilians by mistake when its algorithms were applied to the general population. Since it's an automatic system that isn't operated manually by humans, the meaning of this decision is dramatic. It means you're including many people with civilian communication profiles as potential targets. We only checked that the target was a man. We covered that part. I'm going to skip some of it. Step 2, linking targets to family homes. Okay? The next stage in the Israeli army's assassination procedure is identifying where to attack the targets Lavender generates. 6 sources we spoke to echoed this to some degree, saying that Hamas's extensive tunnel system deliberately passes under hospitals and schools, that Hamas militants use ambulances to get around, and that countless military assets have been situated near civilian buildings. The sources argued that many Israeli strikes kill civilians as a result of these tactics by Hamas, a characterization that human rights groups warn evades Israel's onus for inflicting the casualties. However, in contrast to the Israeli army's official statements, the sources explained that a major reason for the unprecedented death toll from Israel's current bombardment is the fact that the army has systematically attacked targets in their private homes alongside their families. So now that we know the targeting is fraught with errors and the fundamentals of how that targeting process even starts with the data collection is like completely arbitrary, okay? And even that's not enough. They lower the threshold regularly because they want to generate more targets. Now we're getting to where the targets are. Isn't this article evidence of literal war crimes? Yes, everything Israel does is a fucking war crime. It doesn't matter. There's no accountability. So what the fuck are you going to do about it? Why would they care? America, even after the WCK aid workers' assassination by Israel, turned around and said what? They said, oh, well, let's wait for more data. Maybe it wasn't deliberate. It was deliberate. Israel admitted it was deliberate and apologized for it. They said it was a mistake. So when the American State Department position officially is like, even when Israel is like admitting fault, that they are still overstepping Israel and saying, no, it's fine. Why should they fucking care? Then why exactly are we talking about it? My job is to cover the fucking news and engage in commentary to educate people. The more I educate people, the more you know about it, the more you grow a fucking conscience about it, the more you pressure your politicians. The more you pressure your politicians, the harder it gets for them to continue with this ethnic cleansing campaign. That's it. Just because we're never going to have socialized medicine doesn't change the reality that I will always advocate for why we must have it. It's so stupid. What a stupid question. No chair stream, I'm out. Come on, man. Come on, dude. Indeed, several sources emphasize that as opposed to numerous cases of Hamas operatives engaging in military activity from civilian areas, in the case of systematic assassination strikes, the army routinely made the active choice to bomb suspected militants when inside civilian households from which no military activity took place. This choice, they said, was a reflection of the way Israel's system of mass surveillance in Gaza is designed. Source told 972 that since everyone in Gaza had a private house with which they could be associated, the Army's surveillance systems could easily automatically link individuals to family houses. You put hundreds of targets into the system and wait to see who you can kill, said one source. It's called broad hunting. You copy-paste from the list that the target system produces. The system was called Where's Daddy? That's the tracking software. The program that tracks individuals, thousands of individuals simultaneously identify when they are at home and send an automatic alert to the targeting officer, who then marks the house for bombing. Show the article. There are fucking TOS images, dumb fuck. That's why I hide it every now and then. You can also go and read it on your own if you want. It's 972 Mag, Lavender AI, Israeli Army, Gaza. Evidence of this policy is also clear from the data. During the first month of the war, more than half of the fatalities, 6,120 people, belonged to 1,340 families, many of which were completely wiped out while inside their homes, according to UN figures. The proportion of entire families bombed in their houses in the current war is much higher than in the 2014 Israeli operation in Gaza, further suggesting the prominence of this policy. Another source said that each time the pace of assassinations waned, more targets were added to systems like Where's Daddy to locate individuals that entered their homes and could therefore be bombed. He said the decision of who to put in the tracking systems could be made by relatively low-ranking officers in the military hierarchy. This war has been very illuminating about the old military-style Oslo leftists. Back in the 90s, many upper echelon IDF people supported the Oslo process overwhelmingly because they thought it would bring security. Now, those same leftists, while still in favor of peace, in air quotes, are full-on no breaks in favor of the war coldly because Hamas must be destroyed. They're like, war now, but two-state solution after. Yeah, those people have become completely unhinged. Have you seen the video of the YouTuber making fun of you because you were asked not to drink Coke by a fan? No. You know why? Because I'm not fucking stupid. Okay? Because I do not have a mental disability or illness that requires me to watch any and every fucking dumb YouTuber who's literally 3 seconds away from offing themselves and only works to shift the pain away by being like, look at this fucking guy. He's having a great old time. Let's make fun of him so that I hopefully will feel a little bit better about myself. That's why I don't watch those things, okay? I did, however, watch the Australian news coverage because I thought it was very funny. One day, totally of my own accord, I added something like 1,200 new targets to the tracking system because the number of attacks we were conducting decreased, the source said. That made sense to me. In retrospect, it seems like a serious decision I made, and such decisions were not made at high levels. Hasan, I've been desperate for views after Twitch viewership falls off cliff. I know. It is pretty funny that every single person that makes a clip like that, every single person that makes a YouTube video like that would literally kill their mother to have half of my viewership, by the way, which is what makes it even funnier. Like, does no one in their fan bases go, wait a minute, but he's like eclipsing your viewership every fucking day? Like, that makes no sense. It's so funny. They're like desperately trying to cultivate a viewership while being like, he's fallen off. And it's like, dude, what do you mean? Anyway. The first one. Enough. The independent view. It may seem wrong that after more than 30,000 Palestinians in Gaza have perished, it took the deaths of just 7 international aid workers to stir Western governments into a sense of outrage, but that is the reality. They have become symbolic of the lawless and reckless manner in which Benjamin Netanyahu has prosecuted this war. Where once the world stood with Israel in its moment of anguish, it now stands more in opposition to it. The moment has come to do whatever it takes to force Israel to end its war. It has to stop. There it is. The rest of the world is finally coming to the anti-Semitic position that this community had on October 7, on October 8, on October 9, on October 10th. Bros using Twitter posts as proof. Are you stupid? This is the Independent, like the outlet Independent, announcing that this is their front cover tomorrow. What do you mean, bros using Twitter posts as proof? Bro, some of you guys, unfortunately, I think are too stupid to understand what you're looking at. And no, I'm not using Twitter posts for proof. I'm reading an article from 972 Magazine, an Israeli independent investigative journalism outlet, talking about Israel's targeting systems utilizing AI. If you had more than 3 fucking brain cells, you'd be able to comprehend that. I took a brief aside to show an outlet such as The Independent, a British outlet, by the way, which has been real fucking aggro, as well as all of these other mainstream media outlets have in the Western world since October 7, in defending Israel and calling anyone and everyone that says Israel needs to halt its senseless killing machine anti-Semitic, to now turn around and actually assume that same fucking position. This is as close to a primary source as you can get. Yes, it does happen to be on Twitter, because that's where a lot of these outlets break their stories. How has this person been comprehending all the content on the stream so far? They haven't. They have not. And they also aren't in here to learn anything. They're in here to just like say something incredibly idiotic that will probably get celebrated in their fucking hug box of other imbecilic losers that will go, we did it. We took it to the man. We did it. We made him mad. We made him. They unfollowed. Most likely just a sock account. We held the streamer accountable as he was doing what? Oh, detailing the steps of how Israel's conducting a genocide. Do I care about Israel's genocide? No, I care about streamers because I'm a pathetic fucking worm who has nothing else going on in his life. And this is my one singular moment where I can feel alive and forget that my fucking family despises me and literally acts like I died at Thanksgiving. I'm the family member that they don't talk about. But let me tell you, it feels really good when I get one off on the streamer. Anyway. Yeah. Big deal, which the U.S. has refused to do. Genuine question. Will you think it will end in something? Yes, it will. Al Jazeera reports that UK's Rishi Sunak has informed Netanyahu that the UK is considering declaring that Israel has been violating international law. They have been. Considering that they're declaring it is ridiculous. Declared already, they have been. Every step of this way, every single day, because of where the bar was to even remotely criticize Israel, where that bar was so fucking low, or rather so high, I guess, that every single day a new step in the right direction, albeit marginal, is met with understandable cynicism from all of you. And every single day I repeat the same thing over and over again because I have been covering this for the past 10 years. Everything that I'm seeing is unimaginably new. Okay? It's all moving in the right direction, albeit slow, but it's still moving in the right direction. That's why I showed you Jose Andres' posts yelling at the Spanish politician a couple months ago versus his post yesterday or today on the New York Times. This is important to acknowledge. They will never full on come out and say how wrong they were. Instead, they'll keep inching themselves in the correct position. It's fine. Before you say, isn't this too late? Of course, it is a tragedy. Ethnic cleansing is unimaginable. Like, it's just the worst thing you can do. But there are still millions of Palestinians that could potentially also suffer that hopefully will not when international condemnation comes, when Israel stops. It's never too late for justice. I understand why people are pessimistic. But it's also important to recognize that, you know, although this is a slow, crippling pace, creeping pace towards justice, I guess, it's still a step in the right direction. The sources said in the first 2 weeks of the war, several thousand targets were initially inputted into locating programs like Where's Daddy? These included all the members of Hamas's elite forces in the Nukba, all of Hamas's anti-tank operatives, and anyone who entered Israel on October 7. But before long, the kill list drastically expanded. In the end, everyone was In the end, it was everyone marked by Lavender, one source explained. Tens of thousands. This happened a few weeks later when the Israeli brigades entered Gaza. and there were already fewer uninvolved people, i.e. civilians in the northern areas. According to the source, even some minors were marked by Lavender as targets for bombing. Normally, operatives are over the age of 17, but that was not a condition. Lavender systems like Where's Daddy were thus combined with deadly effect, killing entire families, sources said. By adding a name from the Lavender-generated list of the Where's Daddy home tracking system, A explained the marked person would be placed under ongoing surveillance and could be attacked as soon as they set foot in their home, collapsing the house on everyone inside. Let's say you calculate that there's one Hamas operative plus 10 civilians in the house. Usually these 10 will be women and children. So absurdly, it turns out that most of the people you killed were women and children. And then step 3 is choosing a weapon. And of course, they use dumb bombs rather than smart bombs because they think smart bombs are hard to come by because America is not refilling their arsenal fast enough. Don't worry, America is still refilling their arsenal, by the way. Sick fucking country. We are also sick too, to the core. Rotten to the fucking core for continuing with this atrocity. What kind of name is Where's Daddy? It's very illuminating. It is illustrative of exactly what the program is. Where's Daddy implies that there are children that you are killing. That's why it's aptly named Where's Daddy? It comes with the recognition that like the entire program is about killing children, baby killing. In December 2023, CNN reported that according to U.S. intelligence estimates, about 45% of the munitions used by Israeli Air Force in Gaza were dumb bombs, which are known to cause more collateral damage than guided bombs. In response to the CNN report, an Army spokesperson quoted in the article said, as a military committed to international law and a moral code of conduct, we are devoting vast resources to minimizing harm to our civilians that Hamas has forced into the role of human shields. 3 intelligence. By the way, after reading all of this, I hope you understand, like, there's a reason why Hamas exists. There's a reason why Palestinian Islamic Jihad exists. And that reason isn't simply Jew hate in the way that these fucking assholes describe it. This is a reality that Israeli high-ranking officials have reckoned with, whether it be Ben Gurion himself or as recently as, Ehud Barak, who have said in different moments in their lives throughout very different times, drastically different times, that of course, if they were in the same conditions as the Palestinians, they would join Hamas. They would become freedom fighters. So they recognize it too. But because there is the might is right politics at play here, they see it as totally valid. Three intelligence sources, however, told 972 in local call that junior operatives marked by Lavender were assassinated only with dumb bombs in the interest of saving more expensive armaments. The implication, one source explained, was that the Army would not strike a junior target if they lived in a high-rise building because the Army did not want to spend more precise and expensive floor bombs with more limited collateral effect to kill him. But if a junior target lived in a building with only a few floors, the Army was authorized to kill him and everyone in the building with a dumb bomb. They didn't want to waste their better weapons. Doors open. Sorry. And step 4. Oh, here. It was like that with all junior targets tested IC who used various automated programs in the current war. The only question was, is it possible to attack buildings in terms of collateral damage? Because we usually carried out the attacks with dumb bombs, and that meant literally destroying the whole house on top of its occupants. But even if attack is averted, you don't care. You immediately move on to the next target. Because of the system, the targets never end. You have another 36,000 waiting. One source said that when attacking junior operatives, including those marked by AI systems like Lavender, this is the authorization of civilian casualties, subtitle, we attacked almost without considering collateral damage. The number of civilians they were allowed to kill alongside the target was fixed during the initial weeks of the war up to 20. Another source claimed the fixed number was up to 15. These collateral damage degrees, as the military calls them, were applied broadly to all suspected junior militants, the sources said, regardless of their rank, military importance, and age, and with no specific case-by-case examination to weigh the military advantage of assassinating them against the expected harms to the civilians. According to A, who was an officer in a target operating room, in the current war, the Army's Intentional Law Department has never before seen such sweeping approval for such a high collateral damage degree. It's not just that you can kill any person who is a Hamas soldier, which is clearly permitted and legitimate in terms of international law, A said, but they directly tell you you are allowed to kill them along with many civilians. Also, no, killing a Hamas soldier is not clearly permitted and legitimate in terms of international law. That's also bullshit, by the way. I just want to make that clear. You can't just like indiscriminately kill people. That's not a thing you can do. Okay? So this guy is even wrong on that front. The fuck do you mean? Oh, well, this guy is in Hamas. We can kill him. No, you can't. You can't do that, actually. Every person who wore a Hamas uniform in the past year or two could be bombed with 20 civilians as collateral damage, even without special permission. According to A, this was the policy for most of the time that he served. Only later, the military lowered the collateral damage degree. Asked about the security rationale behind this policy, A replied, lethality. We knew we would kill over 100 civilians. At first, we attacked almost without considering collateral damage. In practice, you didn't really count people in each house that is bombed because you couldn't really tell if they were at home or not. After a week, restrictions on collateral damage began. The number dropped from 15 to 5, which made it really difficult for us to attack because if the whole family was home, we couldn't bomb it. Then they raised the number again. Can you explain that aspect of international law? I don't know why it's not permissible to kill Hamas, though I believe you and it makes sense. You can't just kill. Okay, there's a concept called, I think it's called de jure, right? De jure combat? Is that combatant? Is that what it is? I don't know what the exact wording is, but you're not allowed to kill someone that you have declared an enemy combatant if they are not actively in conflict. You can't kill retreating people, especially if they are retreating and they have like, they're done. They're no longer in combat. Not retreating to a different position. Not de jure. It's not. Soup de jure. What was it fucking called? No, it's not de jure. It's hors de combat. Sorry. My fucking silly ass lack of knowledge over... I don't know the exact terminology, but I think it is hors de combat. Okay, not retreating, withdrawing. You can't kill withdrawing forces, not retreating, because retreating implies that they could be retreating to a different position. Yes, you mean retreating with throwing down their weapons, basically giving up the fight, not the position. Exactly. Okay. You can't strike hospitals. You can't strike hospitals even if there are enemy combatants that are being treated medically there. Okay, they are out of combat. They're out of combat. They're no longer enemy combatants. You have no... That is not a correct description of the law of war on that point. What do you mean? You cannot kill someone who is either incapable or unwilling. You can absolutely kill combatants who are not in combat. That's why bombing barracks or bombing behind enemy lines... There is a difference between active combat. We're talking about the original intention of assassinating those you have declared Hamas militants in their fucking family homes. Okay? There's a difference between bombing a position where there are armed combatants versus on a regular basis blowing up civilian infrastructure with a shit ton of civilians in it it's not an enemy military position. It's not a barrack, it's a home. If they are or they combat, that is true, but the analysis is more complicated than that.